Banner here of Body by Banner. Today I'm doing a live Q&A and I've got some questions already lined up. But if you have any questions about nutrition, exercise, whatever, if you want to ask me any personal questions, I might filter some of those if they're weird, but shoot them below in the comments. I always love to hear where you're watching in from, so give me a little hi, and even if you're watching this later, I'd love to hear where you're from. So maybe say hey, I'm Carolyn from Chicago, or wherever you are. So yeah, I'm in Chicago. Whoa, sorry about that, you guys. My setup got a little crazy. So hopefully I won't knock you guys over again. Hey, saw somebody jumping on. So again, yeah, put in any questions in the comments. I'm going to get started with the ones that people emailed me from the newsletter. So I sent a newsletter out to my tribe this week, to the Body by Banner ladies, and I got a few questions back. So this week I sent out a vlog, a little video log of everything I ate and did for exercise in a day. And I did this a couple months ago back in June and had sent out a vlog about everything I ate and kind of did in a day when I wasn't really training as intensely. I was just mostly walking, doing some yoga, light yoga, more restorative yoga, and just some like transverse ab exercises, and that was about it for a month. And that was during the time that my dad was passing, and I was really grieving and not feeling energetic and not having the strength to really do much beyond that, and I honored that. So I went through that back in June, and so I did a repeat now that I've been training more intensely and working out about 4 to 5 times a week, doing either sprints or weight training in the gym, circuits, doing home workouts, whatever, running a bit more. And so I wanted to kind of come back and just go through what I had eaten. So I did that this week in the newsletter. And I'm probably going to do that periodically because I find that people really enjoy that and have given me some really good feedback from that. So I'm going to probably do that every once in a while. So let me know if you like that or if you don't like it. But I wanted to go over some of the questions that came up from that vlog that I did of everything that I ate and did in a training day. So the first question that I've been getting is one that's come up maybe not so much from the newsletter, but also just in general from my coaching group, the Magic Makers movement, and through the Body by Banner page, is what the heck is metabolic conditioning? Because I talk about that often. I give examples of that in my workouts, and people often are just like, am I doing that? Is what I'm doing metabolic conditioning? Is this workout metabolic conditioning? What does that even mean? So I just want to break that down really quickly. I could get into a lot of the science, and maybe that's something that you guys would be interested in. I can do a whole other Facebook Live just about metabolic conditioning. If that's something you're interested in, give me a little like or comment about that, and I will add that as something that I'll just go over really in depth. But right today I want to kind of hit the highlights and not maybe inundate you with all of the science unless you really want it. So metabolic conditioning is an umbrella term that gets thrown around a lot in the fitness industry. You've probably seen it on magazine covers, you've probably heard about it in the gym, or from me, from other trainers, and it can be a really hot topic and sort of this like magic pill in terms of working out that can give you weight loss, muscle building, fat loss, all this magic stuff, burning calories for hours, and to some extent that can be true. And it can be a wonderful way of training to try and stimulate those things. But it depends on how you do it. And I'm going to kind of cover some of the essential components of it after I take this quick sip of water. Sorry, I was rushing to get on and I did not get much water before I started, so I'm feeling a little parched. So there's 3 pathways that it activates. So you kind of have to, I'm not going to go into those except to just mention them, that there's like this immediate pathway of the phagogen pathway that's just like seconds. So you really have to do really quick, intense work that takes seconds. So like sprints as an example. There's the glycolytic pathway that's more of an intermediate pathway, metabolic pathway, and that's more of like, that takes about 1 minute to 4 minutes. So that's more of, you think about intervals that maybe are a minute or so. So they're more intermediate level work. And then the last one is oxidative, and that's more the aerobic pathway, and that's longer lasting. You don't need to recover as much from that. You can usually go for more steady state, lighter work. And that's things like jogging or biking for longer stretches. So with metabolic conditioning, you want to kind of mix these different pathways up into a nice soup that will trigger all the different pathways and give you both aerobic, so using where you're able to breathe and maybe talk to people, and anaerobic, where it's really intense work using weights or doing sprints where you're just all out, or if you think of Tabata training where you're doing 8 rounds of 20 seconds of work, really quick rest, half the time rest is 10 seconds. So you're really getting into that lactic burning sensation in the muscles. So metabolic conditioning makes sure that you're getting both aerobic and anaerobic work done. So it's usually quick and intense. So they're about 10 to 30 minutes. If you're going more than 40 minutes, you're really probably not pushing yourself hard enough to get that metabolic response, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. What are the markers to look for that you're doing metabolic training? So if you're going more than 40 minutes, it's really unlikely that you are pushing the intensity enough to trigger your body's response. And that response I'm going to show you about 4 different things that you look for, and what those are signaling that your body's doing is releasing certain hormones, stress hormones, which are good things in moderation, and growth hormones. So things like human growth hormone and testosterone, which are in small amounts for women, is actually really good for building lean muscle mass, and stress hormones for burning fat. So you want this kind of milieu generated from the anaerobic and aerobic work that you're doing, and I'm going to give you examples in a second, and that is going to create this response, the hormone response, hopefully, that we want, of a bit of stress hormones released and growth hormones released. Those are going to trigger your body's ability to lose fat and gain muscle mass, and will, if you work intensely enough, can trigger this EPOC, or afterburn, where you're having excessive, I forget now exactly what it stands for, EPOC, but it's like excessive post-oxygen consumption, I believe is basically where your body is that, where you're just like recovering for a while after your workout. You're really feeling that like after work, and your body's actually burning more calories after that workout for about 24 to even 48 hours for some people. It just depends. So how do you know if you're kind of getting that trigger of stress and growth hormones that we're wanting? There's 4 things, and these are actually the B's and H's that Jade Tita from Metabolic Effect came up with, and they're called the B's and H's. So there's 2 B's and 2 H's, and so there's 4 things. And the first is breathless. You want to get breathless. So you're really not able to have a chatty conversation with your friend or gym partner. You really to get down to business and just be able to say words, if anything. So you really want to be breathless. The second one is burning. My hair is being really weird today, sorry. So the second one is burning. So you want breathlessness. Burning is that sensation in the muscles where I'm sure you felt this, where you just can barely get like one more push-up out. Or if you're doing a lot of repetitions where it's physically like, for instance, like I often do like drop sets on side raises. So if you're just doing side raises and you like physically, you're like burning in those muscles, you can barely get them up again. That's the burning sensation that you're looking for. You know that you're triggering these hormone releases that we want. Number 3 is heavy. So you want to make sure that it's getting physically hard to finish certain repetitions, that you're using heavy enough weights or doing the most challenging forms of exercises. So for instance, doing some full push-ups before you do the modified ones. I always encourage my ladies to really challenge yourself with the heaviest or the hardest version of the exercise. Then regress if you need to. But you're not going to get improvements. You're not going to get that hormonal response we want for the body to make change. The last one, number 4, is heat. You want to be like hot and dripping in sweat. So that's a good sign that you are getting that response from the body that we want. All right, so the B's and H's: breathless, burning, heavy, and heat. And again, those are not things I came up with. I wish I did, but Jade Tita from Metabolic Effect came up with those. So those are indications that you're getting that response, that you're actually doing metabolic conditioning. So if you're ever wondering, is this a metabolic conditioning workout? If you're having that response and you're doing work for about 10 to 30 minute workout, nothing longer than that, or else it's probably more steady state kind of running, jogging, moderate exercise, then you know that you're doing metabolic conditioning. So some things that metabolic conditioning is not. It's not some of these boot camp classes or even things that I used to do with Boot Camp Buenos Aires when I was the manager before I knew better, was like kind of lightly touching on a lot of different things and keeping people busy and running around and maybe not getting to that burning sensation or that really heavy breathlessness. So if you're just kind of going through obstacle courses and just doing a little bit of everything and not really focusing in on certain muscle groups and repeating those things and getting the whole body working with compound movements, you're probably not doing metabolic conditioning. Some of the classes out there are maybe doing metabolic conditioning. It just depends on how hard you're pushing yourself. So it's very individualized. So for instance, like Orange Theory or Soul Cycle, it really depends on how you are pushing yourself, whether or not it's going to become a metabolic conditioning class for you. They can oftentimes even go into excessive, like too long of that pushing yourself period. It just depends. It depends on the instructor. It depends on how you're pushing yourself and how heavy of a weight you're using or resistance you're using. So ideally 10 to 30 minutes rest is super essential and super individualized in order for it to be strategic. You need both rest during the work. So if you're not working hard enough to make yourself need to rest, you have to rest if you're doing metabolic conditioning. Otherwise, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. If you're not resting, you're probably not doing metabolic conditioning. That's a good marker, a good way of knowing whether you're doing it or not. And the second way rest is essential is that you really need it afterwards because of what I was mentioning before. You're stressing the body. You're releasing stress hormones from the body. It's a stress on the body. So in order to make sure that you're going to get the benefits of it, the real magic happens when you're resting. So incorporating at least 2 days of rest per week where you're still walking, stretching, maybe doing yoga, but not doing any stress-inducing exercise. So rest is essential, both during the workout and after metabolic conditioning, to make sure you're actually getting the benefits and not tipping over into overtraining. All right, rest is best, and part of my motto, work hard, rest well. So you really have to work hard to earn that rest. Other examples could be some of the videos that I've included on my YouTube channel are metabolic conditioning because they're using weights and then incorporating some maybe plyometric exercises or quick cardio bursts. So again, getting that mix of aerobic and anaerobic. You have to really include that anaerobic lactic acid producing aspect in order to kind of have it be a metabolic conditioning workout. So usually that requires weights, maybe some plyometrics, maybe doing really challenging body weight exercises with shorter amounts of rest. It can come in a lot of different forms. Some other examples of it would be sprinting, but exhaustive sprinting, where you're just going all out, just full-fledged sprint for 10 to 30 seconds, no more than that, I would say, and really having to rest up to 4 times ratio, or even more of that sprint. So if you sprint for 20 seconds, for instance, what I did yesterday, I sprinted for about 20 seconds and then walked back, and it was about 4 to 5 times the amount of time to walk back, if that makes sense, right? So it was like 1 minute and 20 seconds usually to walk back and only 20 seconds to walk out or to sprint out. So that's actually about a 6 to 1 ratio. So you really want the ratios of rest to be higher to that really intense sprint. HIIT, or high intensity interval training, or Tabata training. Tabata training is a specific type of HIIT. Tabata training is a structure of 20 seconds of really, really full intense work of one type of exercise with 10 seconds of rest repeated 8 times. So for instance, bike sprint or burpees for 20 seconds all out, and then you rest for 10 seconds, repeat that 8 times. That would be Tabata. So those are some examples of metabolic conditioning. Again, shoot me any questions in the comments if you have questions about metabolic conditioning, or if you have any other questions you want me to answer while we're doing this Q&A. I will get to it today or on another one, because I'm going to try and do these now that Oli's back in school. I am going to try and do these Q&A and actually get on Facebook Live again into my weekly routine. So let me know what day is better for you guys. I just came on today because it happened to work with our schedule since he started school this week. But I was thinking maybe Tuesdays, like a Talk About It Tuesday every week, where I do a Facebook Live with you guys. So let me know if that sounds good to you. And if you have certain times that are better for you, let me know that too. I'm going to try and do it in the middle of the day, around now, around noon time, at least here in Chicago, Midwest area. All right, Sorry, my phone was about to fall again. Okay, next question that I got from a reader is intermittent fasting, specifically for women. So what is intermittent fasting? Because I talk about that again in the vlog that I just sent out in the newsletter, and how I've been sort of playing around with it and seeing if it's something that I wanted to maybe incorporate more regularly in my diet, in my kind of life, and just wanted to test it out and see if it had more benefits for me. So I'm going to go quickly over what is intermittent fasting and what are some considerations, especially for women. So for me, I find that it has to be really used strategically. I can't do intermittent fasting too often, or else it really tips me over into more stress and it causes overcompensation with eating later. So intermittent fasting in general is this idea of, you might have perhaps done fasting yourself for a religious reason at some point in your life, where you maybe can't eat between a certain hours of the day, or for certain meals that you have to not eat, or for a whole day or 3 days or something, like there's different types of fasting that religious groups often do. And then also maybe you've just heard about it as a way of losing weight or a way of sort of regenerating the metabolism, all these kinds of things. There's a lot of different reasons for it. But what intermittent fasting is, instead of doing like a 24-hour fast, intermittent fasting, it's something that's done kind of periodically or on a more regular basis for a specific number of hours throughout the day. Usually, and what I would recommend is around 12 on a regular basis, to up to 16 or even 18 hours some people do for a 24-hour window. So usually I would say 12 to 16 hours is what I would recommend. And to do it, I'm going to go over kind of why maybe you want to do this and some of the benefits from it. But how you would do it would be, I would say for women especially, because we're a little bit more sensitive to these periods of going into, our body triggers like a sensation of us going into starvation mode that can cause problems with our hormones. To prevent that and to be really careful with that, I would recommend definitely not doing intermittent fasting back to back. Like, so you do it Monday and Tuesday. No, I would say you do Monday, maybe do it again Wednesday or Thursday even. So having 2 to 3 days in between, or at least a day in between. And only doing about 2, no more than I would say 3 times a week, just to really, and then be very conscious of these kind of clues that maybe it's not working well for you. Intermittent fasting might not be, and I would definitely encourage those who have any kind of history of eating disorder or obsessiveness around food and counting calories, or anorexia, bulimia, to really just maybe stay away from intermittent fasting. It's not a magic bullet. It's not something that you need to do. We can certainly live healthy lives without it. So if that's something that you've had a struggle with in the past, is any kind of eating disorder, I would just really recommend not toeing into it. It's just not needed. It's okay for you not to go into that. It can be like a trigger for some people who've had eating disorders in the past. So that would be sort of a red flag. I would say probably not the best choice for people who've had any kind of disordered eating in the past. If you have a tendency towards hormonal imbalance, if you're working with a doctor on any kind of hormonal imbalance or thyroid disorder, I would say work closely with someone if you're going to do it, and maybe just don't even go into it. This is maybe, again, a red flag. But again, if you do have any sort of history of hormonal imbalance, really work with someone first before attempting to do intermittent fasting. And then just pay attention. Other things to kind of pay attention to are if it throws off your hunger, if you feel like this FOMO, this fear of missing out, that you're either really your like timings of, okay, you're going to stop eating at 8 p.m. and you're not going to eat again until 10 or maybe 11 or 12 the next day. If you're having this FOMO around 7 or 8 o'clock at night and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't eat for like hours, and you just start like snacking on stuff and adding a lot of extra calories to your diet, and just that sort of feeling that's not really, that you're controlled by food, that's not pleasant and not helpful. It's a waste of energy and makes you feel worse. If you're feeling that, or if you're feeling just the next day that your hunger is really thrown off, then I would say again, maybe play around with it, maybe back off with intermittent fasting, and maybe just look at it as if it's something that is helpful for you or not. If it's really not being helpful in the long run and not giving you sort of these benefits I'm going to go over in just a second, then I would say that's another red flag to say, okay, this might not be the best tool, because it's just a tool. It's not a be-all end-all magic pill kind of thing. Intermittent fasting is I'm going to go over is helpful for certain things and can definitely be a nice tool to use, but it's not necessarily all for everyone. The last thing I just wanted to mention is just like a heads up, pay attention, really notice if you're having any changes in your period. If you're a woman and missing periods, then maybe I would say back off from intermittent fasting right away, check in with a health practitioner, work with someone before you would ever attempt it again. It's really important, because that's a signal to your body that your body's giving you that it's not, the hormones aren't happy. You're not having happy hormones and something's out of whack. So we have to really pay attention to the clues that our body's giving us and respect them and honor them. Okay, so what are the benefits? Why would you even do intermittent fasting? And then I'll go over how I've done it, just to kind of play it out in real life. So intermittent fasting, again, these are claims that don't have, unfortunately, they've been studied a lot in men, but don't have scientific claims to back them up with women. There's just not been a lot of studies done on women, unfortunately, or there have been mixed populations. So the results from those scientific studies can't be applied across to women necessarily. So again, the purported claims, you have to take them and notice if you have them yourself, along with paying attention to some of the red flags, and then see if it works or not for you in your life. Some of the benefits that I found and that are kind of claimed benefits are increased energy, clearer thinking, more clear cognition, and having, which that was a double, so not very clear cognition. I did not do intermittent fasting today. I just repeated what I was saying. So clear cognition and clear thinking are the same thing. Yeah, just mental clarity, increase in your memory, better memory, but really having better energy when you've done intermittent fasting. And other things that have been purported from it are decreases in inflammation markers, so like cortisol and stress hormones have helped reduce those. One thing that I really like about it is the less amount of time and energy having to worry about and think about and prepare food. So if I don't have to make breakfast in the morning, that's awesome. I don't know, like it's just if some people do it where they stop eating earlier and they don't have dinner. They eat earlier in the day and then they stop maybe eating around 6 and then they don't eat again until a later breakfast the next morning. So you can do it any kind of way. I'll tell you in a second how I do my way. But, to just like not have one meal to think about, prepare, clean up from. It saves time, it saves energy, and if it's a healthy thing for me, then it's a nice additional bonus to not have to do those things for one meal a day. A couple other things that it's supposed to be helpful with, again, you need to pay attention to whether or not you experience these things, is helping decrease body fat, so burning fat when you get into that ketogenic stage in the morning where you don't have any more carbohydrates and you're not hopefully breaking down your protein from your muscle, but you're burning fat is what it's really been helpful for. But again, those are studies done more in men than there's not really studies done in women. So that's something you'd have to just see over time if you use intermittent fasting. And again, it's supposed to help with increasing immunity perhaps and decreasing inflammation. It's supposed to help with decreasing your insulin resistance, so helping you become a little bit more insulin sensitive, meaning that when you have carbohydrates, you don't have a huge spike in your blood sugar. So those are some things that it's been shown to be helpful for, or especially in men. Again, the studies haven't been done, good studies haven't been done for women. So what can I say? Sexism in research is alive and well, my ladies. So how do I do it? It is, usually I go for about 14 hours, and I usually finish eating around 8 p.m. at night, because I have a hard time eating any earlier than that. So I usually stop eating around 8 and then have my first meal. So I just drink water, get up in the morning around 6 or by 7, if it's summertime, and And we'll have water, lemon water, so just with a little bit of lemon. So again, that's a little bit, a tiny bit of calories, but it's I keep my total calories under 100 when during that intermittent fasting window of not eating. So I have lemon water still, and then I will have coffee, either black or with a tiny bit of cream. So again, just maybe 20 calories with that, and no carbohydrates. Or I'll do a bulletproof coffee. So that's just fat and no carbohydrates and not even any protein. And that's to hopefully help keep it into a fat burning mode, my body. And then I'll have my first meal of the day on like around no sooner than 10, but usually around 11 or 12. So lunch. I'll usually just have lunch, maybe a little bit earlier than I normally would, and maybe have an extra snack in the afternoon, and then have dinner. And again, I would the next day not do intermittent fasting again, so I would probably have my breakfast the next morning as usual around 8 a.m., lunch around 1, and maybe an afternoon snack. I usually have a green juice, and then dinner. So that would be a normal day, and then maybe the next day I would do intermittent fasting or have 2 days of regular eating and do intermittent fasting. To be honest, I haven't found that lately I've been feeling super great with intermittent fasting. I think because I had a lot of other stresses going on in my life, which is always really important to take into consideration, just how you're sleeping, what other stress from family or work or whatever, life. And if you have a lot of other stresses in your life, intermittent fasting can potentially add another one. So if your body doesn't feel really good with it, I just really encourage you to get in tune with that and to acknowledge that and to not force it, because you're not actually going to get benefits from it if you're pushing your body too hard. All right, you guys with me? Put in any comments or like me if you are with me. And I've got one more question that I got written up here, and let me know. I don't see any. Let's see. It's saying to swipe. Sorry, I'm trying to see if there's comments because it's changing the way that it shows me what's going on. Awesome. Thank you for the like. I don't know who you are, but I appreciate you, and I'm glad you're listening and liking. Okay, I think that's about it on the intermittent fasting. Oh, okay, next question. How do I calculate macros? And so again, from the vlog I sent out in the newsletter, I included everything I ate and drank and did for exercise in a day, and at the end and throughout, I was including how much of the calories, protein, and then of those calories, how much was protein, how much was carbohydrate, how much was fat, and the total at the end of the day of what I ate. And I was joking about how much higher my percentage of fat is than I thought that I was eating. So it's just funny. You know, like you have this idea in your head that something's a certain way, and then in reality, it's actually not. You're just like, oh, okay, that's not actually the case. This is a little different when I actually went and calculated the numbers. So people wanted to know how I did that. So one thing I want to clear up is that when you hear about counting macros on like in fitness world, on the internet, usually people have really complicated calculators for calculating how much you should have of calories per day, and of those calories, carbohydrates, protein, and fat. So a certain percentage or grams of each of those things that you're supposed to have. And then you're supposed to go throughout your day and you can fit in whatever foods you want into those categories. So it's something that you're calculating along the way. What I'm doing is looking back, like retrospective. I am not calculating and keeping track in the moment as I'm going throughout my day. Sometimes I will catch myself being like, oh, how many calories or how much protein did I have already? Because I'm a dietitian and I'm used to crunching numbers, and I try and catch myself actually, because it can get a little obsessive for me personally. I don't find that helpful to track as I go. What I encourage other people to do, and what works really well for myself, and you need to find what works for you, is to do a retrospective check on my macros every once in a while. And what I do is just keep a food journal about 1 or 2 days every month or so, and I'll go and then use calculators to calculate out how many calories I had, and of those calories, how much was protein, carbohydrates, and fat. And what I use are a couple different things. I will use CalorieKing.com, has a great resource and great database that includes all of those macronutrients, and as well as other things like fiber and sodium and that kind of stuff. it keeps telling me my storage is full. It's like the story of my life with my iPhone. Anyone else? It's just like constantly, I'm always running out of storage. Anyway, so I use calorieking.com. I also use my MyFitnessPal database. Like they have a food database. That one I find to be really, I have to cross-check it. Let's just say that. I feel like it can be really inaccurate. So I'll sometimes use it just for ones that I can't find on Calorie King, and then we'll cross-check it as much as I can with labels that I have of the foods I've eaten, because that's usually the most accurate. And then also using old school style diabetic exchanges. So it's really old school style of calculating calories and grams of carbohydrate and protein and fat for the macronutrients. So that's just something I learned as a dietitian back in the day. So I use those 3, and also just some common sense. So I just want to say, so not 3, 4 things. The labels, if I have them, for the foods I'm eating. The calorieking.com is a database. MyFitnessPal as a kind of backup for some obscure things that I couldn't find through other things. And then diabetic exchanges, which is something I've learned as a dietitian through my schooling. And then common sense. So one thing I want to tell you is that labels are not always accurate. They don't always are very precise, let's say. So you have to kind of use some common sense and know that these are estimates, that we're never going to know exactly the very precise grams and calories and all that jazz, as much as some people might really want to know very precisely. So just a heads up that they're estimates, they're not always exactly accurate, and that we're looking at the big picture. So that's why I kind of like to go retrospectively, and just to get an overview and assess sort of where I'm at, and just see if there's any trends, anything I want to tweak, anything that stands out as like, oh, that's just unnecessary. It doesn't really add that much satisfaction to my diet, and it adds a lot of extra fat or calories, and I can actually cut that out, and that's fine. Or I could swap this, and just trying to find that balance between finding a way to eat that's really satisfying and enjoyable, because that's going to be the diet that works for you. I'll just tell you that right now. It's not paleo, it's not counting macros, it's not low carb or whatever, or keto. There's so many different diets out there. And yes, maybe some of the components or some of them might work specifically for you, but only if you like it, and only if it's satisfying and sustainable for you. So that's the diet that works, is one that's enjoyable and sustainable, and gives you energy and helps you maintain a healthy weight. So I just gave you all the secrets. But in terms of like counting macros, what I do is, again, a retrospective check using those resources I just mentioned, and just to sort of look for trends and themes in my diet that I can maybe tweak to optimize, but never to the point of restricting myself so that I can't stick with it. Because if I can't stick with it, I can't sustain it, then it's not an effective diet in the long run, because I'm not going to actually get results beyond maybe a short-term week or 2, or even a month. Some people can last a little longer with the willpower, but for me, that's not actually an effective diet. So that's what I do, and I don't see any questions on here because my phone's being weird, so let me pull up on Facebook. All right, no, I think we're good to go. So thank you so much for joining in. And again, shoot me any questions either in the comments on this video, or private message me, DM me, or email me. And I will definitely include them and feature Facebook Lives. I'm playing around with doing one a week on Tuesdays and in the middle of the day. So try and catch those, and I will be posting about those in the Body by Banner page. All right, talk to you soon, guys. Have a wonderful weekend, and enjoy. Ciao.